Hello.
Hello there.
Very good to meet you.
It's an absolute pleasure to meet you. I'm very sorry that I'm late.
Oh, don't worry about that at all. You're supposed to be late, aren't you?
Am I?
Yeah, that's your privilege. Have a seat anyway, and we'll...
Thank you very much.
Anyway, you're the one who's got the book, so we'll...
It wasn't a privilege that I took deliberately or in any way in a cavalier fashion. It was inadvertent.
Oh, I see. You happy enough to go ahead?
I think so.
Yeah,
I
good.
think so.
Okay.
Do I look handsome, would you say? I mean...
No, you look awful. No, you look fine. You look absolutely fine.
Well, it seems that we can proceed then.
I think so.
If we've agreed everyone looks handsome, do you think that... Well, I'm happy to begin, Jeremy.
Good. Well, I'm very honoured you are available. Russel Brand, you say right at the start of this book, I was born to be famous, and then you say, but it took some decades for the rest of the world to realise that. Why did you want to be famous?
I think that I grew up in a rather desolate and barren cultural environment, industrial Essex, or perhaps post-industrial Essex. And I think amidst that, beneath that heavy, hanging, low grey sky, the idea of something glistening yet visceral were very appealing to me. Fame is seemingly accessible even when you live in areas where it's miles and miles away from you.
Yeah, but I mean, you take something... Lewis Hamilton is famous for driving cars very fast.
Absolutely.
Richard Dawkins is famous as a scientist and an atheist. They're famous
and been
for something.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, you don't say you want to be famous for anything.
Well, not on the first page of my book. See, I've always thought that that rather unappealing trait of craving fame for fame's sake was balanced by my willingness and deep affection for my art. I'm a stand-up comedian, and I worked at stand-up comedy for many, many years for nothing, above pubs for 50 quid, years and years, for not even for that much money. I have a deep artistic attachment to what I do. But the craving for fame, I don't know if I want to take personal responsibility for that, because I did not create a culture that deifies the famous.
No, you're part of a culture that, and your desire to be a celebrity, to be famous, is not at all unusual.
No.
I'm interested, though, in why you think it's taken such a deep root among us.
I suppose that it's an idea that deeply permeates because it's omnipresent. It's everywhere you go. You are perhaps this country's foremost serious journalist that's identifiable and recognisable, and yet here you are interviewing me about the nature of celebrity. I'm sure you've on your show seen important topics subjugated for frivolous celebrity-based items, and I'm sure that must be very frustrating for you.
There'll be viewers who'll say that's exactly what's happening with this interview.
Precisely that. Yes, I would imagine that to a degree they're right. And I'm very flattered that you're here at all. It's remarkable for me. But I don't think that's... So I think for me individually, the concept of fame reached me before the concept that fame was plausible and possible through comedy.
Sure, you're talking again about yourself, but I'm just wondering, you must have thought about this at a broader level.
Yes.
Why is it so many people crave celebrity now? Have you thought about that?
Yes, I have.
And what's your answer?
Because we're presented with the attractive spectacle of fame to distract us from the mundanity of our everyday lives. It's bread and circuses, Jeremy. Because
in that case, it's utterly empty.
Of course.
In itself, it is not something worth striving for.
It has absolutely no value of itself. It's a spectacle, an illusion, a distraction. I think all of us are aware of that.
I sometimes think it might be something to do with religion and the decline of religion.
Well, so that we now have a pantheon of celebrities where once...
People think, you know, it's about significance. Famous people appear to have significance,
yes.
And previously it was religion that gave people that sense they had a significance.
Of course, people are, and I think that significance can shift. Yeah. Diana was at different points in her trajectory of fame presented as the virgin, presented as the whore, presented as a martyr. So where relevant, fame can transmogrify and alter to represent what's culturally necessary at that time to suit the narrative. People enjoy narratives, and I suppose that's why politics has become inundated with these narrative ideas. Oh, this brother begats that brother, Cain versus Abel, it's David versus Ed, because people no longer want to grapple with the death of the grand ideas. No one cares about religion anymore, no one cares about communism anymore, because we've been fed this grey sludge of celebrity, glittered up and packaged and lacquered and sent directly into our brains via the media that both you and I work for in different degrees.
What happens to you when it arrives?
What happens is you have the initial thrill of achievement, oh my word, the same as if you'd acquired a pair of shoes that you'd long craved, and then you realise that the shoes are too tight, they ain't that comfortable, I want another pair of shoes, walking around in these things ain't the same as I thought it would be, and you realise that you need nutrition from a higher source, something more valuable. Celebrity in and of itself is utterly, utterly vacuous. It's like being presented with the most glorious meal, and then when you eat it, there's no taste, there's no succour, there's no nutrition. It's tiresome. And particularly now, when coupled with something, I was like, having, like, had the mundane yet marvellous experience of falling in love with somebody, and now having a sort of private life and something I want to protect, and yet the fame continues to cast its shadow, it's a pain in the arse.
Does privacy mean anything to you anymore?
Yes, it means a great deal to me, mostly as a commodity that's very hard to
Your
achieve.
book is about the most intimate human things. It's about love, yes, but it's also a great deal about shagging and drinking and drugs and the rest of it. These are quite personal things, and I wonder if you've put it all out there and rather regret it.
Don't you think, though, Jeremy, that art to some degree, if I may use that rather grandiose little word, is about the personal, and what other conduit for experience have I got other than the personal? And to tell you the truth, that I maintain the intimate because there are countless feelings, thoughts and fears that aren't shared in those pages.
Do you worry that it's done something to you?
When I first became famous, Jonathan Ross said to me, how are you coping with this? And I sort of went, yeah, and I must have looked all bruised and shattered like a man at the foothills of a mountain staring up at the summit. And I said, it's a bit scary, isn't it? He goes, yeah, you lose something and you never get it back. And the thing to which he refers is, of course, that privacy, that sense of yourself, that ability to identify yourself with intimate things, to define your own narrative. Now I've become, there's an extracted icon of me that's used to splashed across newspapers and used to represent what is convenient again for these narrative ideas. So it's a huge compromise. It's not what you think it's going to be. If you are pursuing it for its own end, then that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous and unfulfilling. But if you have a deep love of singing or dancing or basket weaving, then you should pursue that. But if you're pursuing it because of you think that there might be some supplementary celebrity experience, then you are misinformed and you're due to experience great dissatisfaction.
But there's clearly a danger you start to believe the public's idea of you.
Yes, you could believe that, but fortunately I'm privileged in that I have real friends and real people around me, and we're all equally aware of how preposterous it is, and how the way that these images and ideas are manipulated to maintain a cultural narrative to keep people spellbound and stupid, as opposed to elucidate on real people. Who actually cares about what I really am, or what I really think, or what I really feel? What's much more convenient is the idea of the cad, the bounder, the dandy, making these minor transgressions in the media.
You don't regret it?
What?
You
Anything?
don't regret seeking celebrity and the effect it's had on you?
No, because what else would I be doing? I'm not saying that it's any, like, having spent a great proportion of my life not being famous, that didn't have any particular value either. I didn't particularly enjoy working as a scab labourer, as a postman. I didn't particularly enjoy working in pubs or selling ink cartridges for Hewlett-Packard. These things weren't salvation either. It weren't to be found there. So, no, I don't regret it, but now that I'm here, I wonder if it's possible to use it to acquire something more valuable, more beautiful, and to illuminate those ideas.
The most notorious incident is the voicemail, the message left on Andrew Sachs's answering machine. I'm just wondering how you work out in your mind that it's okay to leave a message on a very old man's answering machine talking about having sex with his granddaughter, but it's not acceptable for a paparazzo to try to shove his camera lens up your fiancée's skirt.
Allow me to explain.
Please.
Because there wasn't a predisposed idea to call up Andrew Sachs. We were calling Andrew Sachs up because he was supposed to be on the show. He was booked as a guest. Then he didn't answer his phone. Then someone said, do you want to leave an answer phone message as he's not answering? This is the kind of wacky, flung-together, lo-fi show. The listeners enjoy that, listening to their casual, disposable podcasts in this casual, disposable age. Why not leave a humorous message for Andrew Sachs? So I was leaving a message that alluded to the idea that the listeners already had the knowledge, oh, Russell's slept with Andrew Sachs's granddaughter. So I alluded to that idea in a charming, whimsical, light-hearted way, because of course in my mind I wasn't leaving a message on the answer phone of an elderly man. I didn't have that idea. I thought it was Manuel from 40 Towers holding a silver platter. That's what I had in my mind, because that's what fame presented me with. That's what culture presented me with. Culture doesn't say, he's a diabetic, he's recently had an operation. Fame says it's the bloke out of 40 Towers. So I was just like leaving that message and going, I've always respected you, and as a comedian I love 40 Towers. I respect your progeny and your descendants. That was where the illusion would have ended. received. And then Jonathan, at that moment, shouted the famous, now infamous sentence, and and then the rest of the broadcast became about calling back that answer phone to apologise for it, recognising it was wrong. There was never a decision to do it. It wasn't like a contrived joke, a prank, a bit of situationism. It was a silly, daft mistake, and I'm truly, truly sorry for being rude to Andrew Sachs. That was very, very impolite and very, very bad manners, but it wasn't like a deliberate act. It was accidental. Now, how that differs, Jeremy, from a paparazzi sticking a lens up my girlfriend's skirt is he deliberately makes a choice to stick a lens up my girlfriend's skirt to take photographs of her sex organs. A deliberate choice. He didn't accidentally, bunglingly, foolishly, while caught up in the whimsy of creation in a low-file radio show, put a lens there. You know, I would never deliberately upset Andrew Sachs or anybody. It's against my ethos, it's against everything I believe in. Similarly, I wouldn't deliberately take a photograph of up someone's skirt. It's preposterous and utterly distinct from the two incidents being a relation.
You say the whole incident was overblown.
Yes, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would. I would absolutely agree with you personally, yes. If it was overblown, why do you need to apologise for it?
I apologise not for the incident itself, I apologise for leaving an impolite message. The subsequent hyperbole, lunacy and inflated media interest for me is just a phenomena, just an abstract phenomena. Very interesting to me that such minutiae can be conveniently inflated to destroy the BBC by the privately owned media. It was interesting. It was interesting.
I know Jonathan Ross, your friend, left the BBC.
Yes.
Was he right to do that?
It was right for him to do that, and I suppose perhaps he felt his options were limited due to, again, the narrative. They didn't want him to be earning that money. They don't like that idea at the Daily Mail.
You see one of these things. This is the form now that has to be filled in. This is a consequence of what you did. This is the form
this is it.
that has to be filled by everyone.
I'm not Michael Howard, Jeremy. Calm down.
But it's just interesting. You've got to sign.
This didn't exist before me, but now it exists.
Now it exists, and you have to.
This is my legacy. Bureaucracy.
Precisely.
My legacy is bureaucracy.
You have to sign a form.
I consider myself so radical.
Are there any references to sex? Are there any references to politics?
Well, there are.
Well. Sure.
Left with several references to sex and politics.
You have to sign this, and the argument is that what's happened as a consequence is that kind of creativity has just been stifled.
Why don't you give this to Paul Dacre? Because this isn't my responsibility. I called an elderly... If there's any more problems because of answer phone messages being left, I'll over to Russell in the studio, I'll apologise on your behalf. But this is because of the Daily Mail. This is because of Rupert Murdoch. This is because people don't want to pay licence fee anymore. This is because newspaper sales are falling.
It's a consequence of your
voicemail. It would have happened. No. I think that narrative was occurring, and they were looking for that incident. The Daily Mail. How many times have the Daily Mail found other reasons to attack the BBC citizen? Frankie Boyle said a thing. No one at the Daily Mail legitimately went, what? Russell Brand did what? He actually left a message on Andrew. It's completely disingenuous. It's a complete confection and utter fabrication for the convenient purpose of destroying an organisation for which you work. I'm sorry that my actions led to facilitated that in some way, but I may just as well have tipped paint on Paul Dacre's lawn and caused a controversy.
Regardless of the causality of the thing, that is the consequence.
Yes.
Do you think that, do you notice that it's become sort of cabin, cribbed, confined, uncreative generally?
Well, I don't watch an awful lot of television.
Because that's the accusation from Stephen Fry, of course.
Yes, well, I think that's unfortunate if that is true. I don't watch enough television to make an accurate appraisal, but I can see that this would not be helpful to creativity in any way, unless you use the back of it to make notes on for jokes, which is what I would do with it. Or perhaps have it moistened with some lubricant and hang it in a latrine.